The arrival of the Terran troops. On the distant planet of Zerath, excitement filled the air as news spread across the alien cities. The Zyrethians, known for their vibrant green skin and large, curious eyes, had never seen a human. Today, that was about to change. A group of Terran troops was scheduled to land, and many Zyrethians gathered at the landing site, their hearts racing with anticipation. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, the bright light cast a warm glow on the landscape. The landing area was a vast open field surrounded by tall, shimmering trees. Zyrethians, young and old, stood in clusters, their chatter echoing through the air. They shared stories about humans, wondering if the tales they had heard were true. Some said that humans were fierce and aggressive, while others claimed they were clever and resourceful. At the forefront of the crowd stood Lyra, a young medic known for her bright mind and kind heart. She had always been curious about humans and their strange ways. Today, she wore her best uniform, hoping to make a good impression. Her long blue hair flowed in the wind as she nervously adjusted her medical kit, filled with instruments she thought might help bridge the gap between their two worlds. Suddenly, a loud roar filled the air, and the ground shook slightly. Lyra looked up to see a large spacecraft descending from the sky. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, with its shiny silver surface and flashing lights. The crowd gasped in awe as the ship landed smoothly on the field, kicking up a cloud of dust. The ship's door opened, and a ramp extended down to the ground. The Zyrethians held their breath, eager to see what would emerge. As the dust settled, figures began to appear. The Terran troops stepped out, wearing heavy uniforms that seemed out of place in the gentle Zyrethian climate. Lyra noticed their strange features. Some had short hair, while others had long, wild hair. Their faces were different too, with various skin tones and expressions of curiosity and excitement. The leader of the Terran troops, a tall man with a stern face and bright blue eyes, stepped forward. "Greetings, Zyrethians. We are here to assist you and learn from your ways," he announced confidently. Lyra watched as the Zyrethians exchanged glances. Some looked impressed, while others seemed uncertain. She could feel the tension in the air. It was clear that the Zyrethians were both excited and fearful. They had heard stories about humans and their battles, and now they were face to face with them. "Welcome," Lyra called out, stepping forward with a friendly smile. "I am Lyra, a medic. We look forward to learning from each other." The human leader smiled back, his expression softening. "I'm Captain Mark. Thank you for your warm welcome." His voice was deep and steady, making Lyra feel a bit more at ease. As the humans and Zyrethians began to mingle, Lyra noticed a group of Terran medics stepping out of the ship. They carried strange bags filled with unfamiliar tools. The Zyrethians watched in fascination as the medics began to set up a makeshift medical station. Lyra felt a rush of excitement. This was her chance to learn more about human medicine. She quickly approached one of the Terran medics, a woman with bright red hair tied back in a ponytail. "Hello, I'm Lyra," she said, extending her hand in greeting. "Hi there, I'm Sarah," the human medic replied with a smile, shaking Lyra's hand. "We're here to share our knowledge and learn yours." Lyra was amazed at how friendly Sarah seemed. "What do you use in your medical practices?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Sarah opened her bag and began to show Lyra the tools. "This is a stethoscope," she explained, holding it up. "It helps us listen to heartbeats." Lyra tilted her head, fascinated. "We use a different method. We rely on touch and intuition." She wondered if they could combine their methods to help each other. As the day went on, more humans emerged from the ship, each bringing new tools and equipment. Lyra noticed that some Zyrethians were still hesitant, watching from a distance. She understood their fears. The stories about humans had created a sense of danger in their hearts. But as the Terran troops began to demonstrate their medical techniques, the Zyrethians slowly approached. Lyra watched as the humans bandaged a mock injury, explaining each step in simple terms. The Zarethians were captivated, their fear starting to fade. The sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the field. Lyra could feel a sense of hope growing within her. Perhaps this would be the start of a new friendship between their two species. She envisioned a future where Terrans and Zarethians worked side by side, sharing knowledge and helping those in need. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Lyra felt a warm glow in her heart. She knew that the arrival of the Terran troops was just the beginning of a great adventure. Together, they would navigate the medical absurdities that lay ahead, learning from one another in ways they could not yet imagine. Lyra looked around at her fellow Zarethians, who were now engaged with the humans, sharing laughter and smiles. In that moment, she realized that perhaps the legends of humans weren't as scary as she had been led to believe. Instead, they were a source of inspiration, ready to change the fate of their worlds. Bridging two worlds. The following days on Zirath were filled with excitement and discovery. The arrival of the Terran troops marked the beginning of a unique exchange between two cultures that had never interacted before. Lyra felt a sense of purpose each day as she assisted the human medics, learning new techniques and sharing her own knowledge. One morning, the sun shone brightly as Lyra prepared for another day of work at the makeshift medical station. She found herself eagerly anticipating what new discoveries lay ahead. The Terrans had set up their equipment in a large tent, and it buzzed with activity. Lyra entered the tent, greeted by the familiar sounds of tools clattering and voices discussing medical procedures. "Good morning, Lyra," Sarah called, her red hair glinting in the sunlight. "We're ready to start our first training session. Are you excited?" Lyra nodded, her heart racing with enthusiasm. "Yes, I can't wait to learn more about your methods." As the training began, Lyra watched intently as Sarah demonstrated how to use a medical scanner. The device looked sleek and advanced, and she marveled at how quickly it provided information about a patient's condition. "Here, let me show you how it works," Sarah said, handing the scanner to Lyra. "You just hold it near the patient, and it gives us vital signs." Lyra held the scanner, her fingers brushing over its smooth surface. She aimed it at a nearby volunteer, a Zarethian who was eager to help. The scanner beeped softly, and Lyra's eyes widened as it displayed the readings. "This is incredible," she exclaimed. "It's so precise." "Exactly," Sarah replied, beaming. "It helps us understand what's going on inside a patient's body without invasive procedures." Lyra was inspired. She had always relied on her intuition and hands-on techniques to diagnose patients, but this scanner opened a new world of possibilities. Perhaps she could incorporate both methods into her practice. As the training continued, more Zarethians began to show interest. They watched curiously as Lyra and Sarah worked together, fascinated by the human technology. Soon, a small crowd gathered outside the tent, eager to see what the fuss was about. "Come in, everyone. We're about to demonstrate," Lyra called out, inviting her fellow Zarethians to join. One by one, they stepped inside the tent, their eyes wide with curiosity. Lyra introduced them to the scanning device, and the Zarethians began to ask questions. "What happens if it detects a problem?" one Zarethian asked, tilting his head in confusion. Sarah smiled and explained, "If we find something unusual, we can discuss treatment options right away. It allows us to be proactive." The Zarethians listened intently, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. They were eager to learn, just as Lyra had been. The excitement in the air was palpable, and Lyra felt a rush of pride at bridging the gap between their worlds. As days turned into weeks, the collaboration flourished. Lyra and Sarah worked side by side, sharing their knowledge and experiences. Lyra taught Sarah about herbal remedies and traditional Zarethian healing practices, while Sarah introduced her to advanced medical techniques. One afternoon, as they sat together under the shade of a large tree, Lyra couldn't help but feel grateful for the friendship that had formed. "It's amazing how much we can learn from each other," she said, smiling at Sarah. "I never thought I would be working with humans." Sarah grinned back. And I never imagined I would be learning about Zyrethian medicine. It's all about finding common ground. As they exchanged stories and techniques, Lyra's respect for humans grew. She admired their determination and their willingness to share knowledge. She realized that the stories of Terran ferocity were only part of the truth. Beneath that exterior was a genuine desire to help and understand. However, not all Zyrethians were convinced. A few still held on to their fears, whispering among themselves about the unknown nature of humans. Lyra understood their concerns, but she was determined to prove that the Terrans were allies, not threats. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Lyra organized a gathering to celebrate the collaboration. She invited the Zyrethians and Terrans to share a meal, hoping to foster goodwill between the two groups. As the feast began, laughter and chatter filled the air. Lyra watched as humans and Zyrethians mingled, sharing stories and food. The aroma of Zyrethian dishes mixed with the scent of Terran specialties, creating a delightful fusion of flavors. "Let's play a game," a Zyrethian shouted, and soon everyone was participating in a traditional Zyrethian dance. Lyra joined in, her heart soaring as she spun and twirled with her new friends. The walls that had once separated them began to crumble, replaced by a spirit of unity. Later that night, as the stars twinkled above, Lyra sat with Sarah near a glowing fire. "Do you think this will last?" she asked, her voice soft. Sarah looked thoughtful. "I believe it will. We've started something beautiful here. As long as we keep communicating and learning from each other, there's no limit to what we can achieve." Lyra nodded, feeling a deep sense of hope. The journey was just beginning, and together, they would navigate the challenges ahead. She felt a bond forming between the Zyrethians and the Terrans, one that transcended their differences. As the fire crackled and the night air filled with laughter, Lyra knew that the arrival of the Terran troops had changed everything. Together, they would create a future where knowledge, understanding, and friendship thrived, bridging the gap between their worlds. Challenges ahead. The weeks turned into months as Lyra and Sarah continued to strengthen the bond between Zyrethians and Terrans. Together, they created a harmonious atmosphere in the medical tent, where both species learned from each other. But soon, they would face challenges that tested their collaboration and unity. One afternoon, Lyra and Sarah were gathered with their teams, discussing the latest patient cases. The atmosphere was relaxed, and laughter filled the air as they shared stories of their unique medical practices. Suddenly, a Zyrethian soldier rushed into the tent, his face pale with worry. "Lyra, we need your help," he exclaimed, panting for breath. "There's been an accident near the border. Several soldiers are injured." Without hesitation, Lyra sprang into action. "Sarah, grab the medical supplies. We need to leave now." Sarah nodded, her expression turning serious. "I'll help organize the medics. Let's go." Within minutes, they had gathered a team of both Zyrethians and Terrans, ready to assist. As they rushed to the location of the accident, Lyra felt her heart race. She had trained for emergencies, but this was different. They were facing an unknown situation together. When they arrived at the scene, chaos reigned. The air was thick with dust and smoke, and several soldiers lay on the ground, groaning in pain. Lyra quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing as she organized her team. "Sarah, I need you to check the vital signs of these soldiers," Lyra instructed, pointing to a group of injured Zyrethians. "I'll start with this Terran over here." Sarah moved quickly, her scanner in hand. Lyra knelt beside a Zyrethian soldier who was clutching his side, his face twisted in pain. She gently lifted his tunic, revealing the deep wound. "We need to apply pressure to this," Lyra said, looking for supplies. "Is there anyone who can help me?" A Terran medic stepped forward, his brow furrowed with concern. "I've got some gauze. Let's stop the bleeding." As they worked together, Lyra felt a sense of unity. They were all focused on the same goal: saving lives. But even as they worked, a sense of unease crept into Lyra's mind. The accident had been caused by a skirmish between rival factions, and tensions were rising. After hours of treating the wounded, they finally managed to stabilize most of the injured soldiers. However, the atmosphere remained tense. Lyra could see it in the eyes of her fellow Zarethians. Fear and distrust were bubbling beneath the surface. Whispers about the Terrans filled the air, and Lyra knew that their unity was fragile. Back at the base, Lyra gathered her team. "We need to address the concerns of our people," she said, her voice firm. "If we want this collaboration to work, we must communicate openly and dispel their fears." Sarah nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "We should hold a meeting with both Zarathians and Terrans. Let's encourage everyone to share their thoughts." That night, they organized a gathering at the central plaza, inviting both factions to come together. Lyra felt a mix of excitement and apprehension as she stood before the crowd. The tension was palpable, and she knew that this was their chance to bridge the gap. "Thank you all for coming," Lyra began, her voice steady. "We've faced challenges together, but we must remember that we are stronger united. Let's share our concerns and fears so we can move forward." One by one, Zarethians stepped forward, voicing their worries about the Terran troops. They spoke of stories passed down through generations, tales of humans being fierce and dangerous. Lyra listened patiently, acknowledging their fears. "Those stories may be true for some," she said, "but we have seen that humans can also be compassionate and willing to help. They have saved our soldiers today, and they care for our people." After Lyra spoke, Sarah took her turn. "As Terrans, we understand that trust must be earned. We are here to support you, to learn from you, and to protect you. We want to be allies, not enemies." Slowly, the crowd began to shift. Some Zarethians shared their positive experiences with the Terrans, recounting how they had learned new medical techniques and seen acts of kindness. Others were still hesitant, but Lyra could see a glimmer of hope in their eyes. As the meeting continued, the atmosphere transformed from one of fear to one of curiosity. They began to share stories of their cultures, creating a bond that transcended their differences. Laughter filled the plaza as they discovered common ground. That night, Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had taken a significant step toward bridging their worlds. However, she knew that the path ahead would not be easy. There would be more challenges, misunderstandings, and fear to overcome. In the days that followed, the collaboration between Zarathians and Terrans grew stronger. They worked side by side in the medical tent, sharing knowledge and learning from one another. Lyra's heart swelled with pride as she witnessed the transformation taking place. But shadows loomed on the horizon. Reports of skirmishes along the borders continued, and Lyra sensed an undercurrent of tension. While they had made progress in building relationships, the threat of conflict still lingered. Lyra gathered her team again, determined to prepare for what lay ahead. "We must remain vigilant and support one another," she urged. "If we want to protect what we've built, we need to stand together, no matter the challenge." As they prepared for the uncertain days ahead, Lyra knew that their journey was far from over. The Terran troops had arrived, and with them, a new chapter began, one filled with hope, challenges, and the promise of unity. Together, they would navigate the complexities of their worlds, striving to find common ground and build a future free from fear. Tensions rise. The days turned into weeks, and the relationship between the Terran troops and the Zarethians continued to grow. Lyra and Sarah worked tirelessly, ensuring that their medical teams were united in purpose. They shared ideas, exchanged techniques, and learned from one another, but the underlying tension in the region was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. One morning, while preparing for a routine training session, Lyra received alarming news. A skirmish had broken out between Zarethian factions near the border. The conflict had escalated quickly, and injuries were reported on both sides. Lyra's heart sank as she thought of the fragile alliances they had worked so hard to build. "Sarah, we need to respond immediately," Lyra said, her voice steady but urgent. "We can't let fear and violence unravel everything we've accomplished." Sarah nodded, her expression grave. "I'll gather the Terran medics. We need to be ready for whatever comes our way." As they rushed to prepare their teams, Lyra felt a surge of determination. They had come too far to let chaos destroy their efforts. But deep down, she knew that the violence could threaten not just their alliance, but the very lives they were trying to protect. When they arrived at the site of the skirmish, chaos reigned. The battlefield was filled with injured soldiers from both sides, and Lyra felt her heart race as she assessed the scene. Smoke rose from distant fires, and the air was thick with tension and fear. "Set up a triage area over there," Lyra shouted, pointing to a clearing away from the fighting. "We need to prioritize those who are critically injured." Sarah worked alongside her, coordinating the Terran medics to ensure they were organized and efficient. As they set to work, Lyra caught sight of a Xyrethian soldier limping toward them, blood staining his tunic. Panic surged in her chest as she rushed to help him. "Stay still. I need to assess your injuries," she said, kneeling beside him. The soldier grimaced, clearly in pain. "We're here to help." Just then, a loud explosion echoed in the distance, sending shockwaves through the ground. Lyra's heart raced as she looked up, fear creeping into her mind. The fighting was too close, and they were in danger. "Everyone, stay focused," Sarah called out, her voice steady amid the chaos. "We can't let fear control us. We need to save these lives." Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath to calm herself. They had to be strong for those around them. They worked quickly, tending to the wounded and providing comfort where they could. But with every passing moment, the sounds of battle grew closer. As the hours passed, they managed to stabilize many of the injured, but the chaos outside the triage area continued. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and Lyra could feel the tension mounting. The Xyrethians were angry and scared, and some began to direct their frustration at the Terrans. "Why are the humans here?" one Xyrethian soldier shouted, his voice filled with rage. "They are not our allies. They will only bring more destruction." Lyra turned to face him, her heart pounding. "We are here to help. We want to save lives, not take them." But the soldier shook his head, refusing to listen. "You don't understand. They are the enemy. You shouldn't trust them." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes fierce. "We understand your fears, but we are not your enemy. We are here to support you, to fight against the real threat. We want to protect everyone here." The crowd began to murmur, voices rising in agitation. Lyra sensed the division growing, and her heart sank. They had worked so hard to build trust, yet the chaos of battle was unraveling their efforts. The Xyrethians felt betrayed, and the Terrans were viewed with suspicion. In the midst of the turmoil, Lyra noticed a familiar face among the crowd, a Xyrethian medic named Roland, who had worked alongside them in the medical tent. She had always admired his dedication and compassion. "Roland, please, help us," Lyra called, hoping he could bridge the gap. "You know us. You've seen what we can do together." Roland stepped forward, his expression serious. "I trust you, Lyra, but others do not. They see only the chaos and fear." As the tension reached a boiling point, Lyra felt a wave of desperation. "We need to remind them of the bond we've built. We need to show them that together, we are stronger." Taking a deep breath, Lyra stepped forward, addressing both Xyrethians and Terrans. "Listen to me. We have saved lives together. We have learned from one another. We cannot let fear divide us." She felt the weight of their gazes, and for a moment, silence fell over the crowd. "We are in this fight together. We must unite against those who wish to harm us. We cannot allow mistrust to lead to our downfall." The crowd began to murmur, and Lyra saw some Xyrethians exchanging uncertain glances. She pressed on, hoping to rally them. "Let us come together, not just as Xyrethians and Terrans, but as allies who seek peace. Together, we can create a brighter future. Slowly, Roland stepped forward, raising his hand. I believe in this unity, he said. I have seen what we can achieve together. We cannot let fear win. One by one, other Zyrethian soldiers began to speak up, echoing Roland's sentiment. The tide was turning, and Lyra felt a sense of hope blossoming in her chest. They could rebuild the trust that had been shaken. As they worked to resolve the conflict, Lyra realized that they were all facing challenges that required strength and courage. The battle outside would continue, but within the Trage area, a new resolve began to take shape. The road ahead would be difficult, but Lyra was determined to fight for unity. Together, they would confront the challenges that lay ahead, forging a path toward a future where both Zyrethians and Terrans could coexist peacefully. In the face of adversity, they would rise together, stronger than ever before. The battle within. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Lyra and Sarah worked tirelessly to maintain the fragile alliance between the Terran troops and the Zyrethians. The Trage area had become a symbol of hope, a place where both sides came together in the spirit of cooperation. But the shadows of doubt lingered, and the tension remained high. Lyra found herself spending more time with Roland, the Zyrethian medic who had become an unexpected ally. They shared stories of their worlds, their cultures, and their dreams for the future. Roland's calm demeanor helped soothe Lyra's worries, and she felt a growing friendship blossoming between them. Together, they had treated countless injured soldiers, regardless of their allegiance, proving that their unity could save lives. One day, as they were cleaning up after a long shift, Lyra overheard a group of Zyrethian soldiers discussing the recent skirmish. Their voices were filled with anger and frustration. They think they can just walk in and take over. One soldier shouted, "Humans are not to be trusted. We need to send them back to their own planet." Lyra's heart sank as she listened. She knew that their fragile bond was still at risk. Stepping closer, she decided to intervene. "I understand your fears, but please, remember what we have accomplished together. The Terrans are not our enemies." The soldiers turned to her, their expressions conflicted. "You say that now, but what happens when they turn against us?" Another soldier challenged. "We fought hard for our freedom. We can't let them take it away." Roland stepped forward, his voice steady. "We are not here to take anything from you. We came to help. If we turn against each other now, we will all lose." Lyra felt the weight of their gazes upon her. "We are in a dangerous situation. There are enemies out there who wish to see us both destroyed. We must unite against them." The soldiers exchanged glances, uncertainty etched on their faces. Lyra took a deep breath, willing herself to stay calm. "We are stronger together. We have proven that in the medical tent. We have saved lives together. Let us not forget that." After a tense silence, one of the soldiers spoke up. "You're right, Lyra. We have fought side by side. But what if it's all just a trap?" Before Lyra could respond, an alarm blared through the camp. The ground shook as explosions erupted in the distance. Fear rippled through the soldiers, and Lyra's heart raced. They were under attack. "Everyone, to your stations," Sarah shouted, her voice piercing through the chaos. Lyra and Roland exchanged worried looks, knowing that the moment of truth had arrived. They had to defend their alliance, and they had to do it now. As the troops gathered, Lyra felt a surge of adrenaline. She quickly organized the medics, preparing for the inevitable injuries they would face. They had trained for moments like this, but the reality of battle was always daunting. Roland stood beside her, his expression fierce. "We must work together to protect our people. If we keep our focus, we can overcome this threat." The sounds of battle grew closer, and Lyra felt the weight of her responsibility. She turned to the assembled troops, a mix of Zyrethians and Terrans, and raised her voice. "Listen, we have fought for our lives, and we can do it again. Trust one another. Work together. We cannot let fear control us now." The soldiers nodded, determination flashing in their eyes. Lyra felt a wave of hope. They were ready to stand together. As the enemy approached, chaos erupted in the camp. The ground shook underfoot as energy blasts lit up the sky. Lyra moved quickly, directing medics to prepare for incoming casualties. Her heart raced, knowing they were in for a fight. The battle rage and the sounds of war filled the air. Lyra focused on her task, moving from one wounded soldier to another, treating injuries with urgency. Roland fought bravely alongside the Xyrethians, his presence a beacon of strength. As they fought, Lyra felt a shift in the atmosphere. The soldiers began to trust one another, rallying together in the face of danger. The Xyrethians and Terrans fought side by side, pushing back against the attackers with fierce determination. But as the battle intensified, Lyra's heart sank when she saw a familiar face among the wounded. It was Sarah, lying on the ground, blood staining her uniform. Panic surged through Lyra as she rushed to her friend's side. "Sarah, stay with me," Lyra shouted, kneeling beside her. She felt a wave of desperation as she assessed the injury. "You're going to be okay. Just hold on." Roland joined her, his face pale with worry. "We need to stop the bleeding. I'll get the supplies." He dashed off, leaving Lyra to comfort her friend. "Lyra, I can't," Sarah gasped, her voice weak. "I wanted to help. I wanted to make a difference." "You have made a difference," Lyra said, tears streaming down her face. "You are a hero. Just stay with me. We're going to get you through this." As Roland returned with supplies, Lyra worked furiously to stabilize Sarah. The battle around them raged on, but all that mattered was saving her friend. Every second felt like an eternity as she fought against time. With Roland's help, Lyra bandaged Sarah's wounds, her heart pounding with fear and determination. "You're strong, Sarah. You're going to pull through this." As they worked, Lyra glanced up and saw the Xyrethian soldiers rallying together. Their fighting spirit was fierce, and the Terrans fought valiantly alongside them. Lyra felt a renewed sense of hope. They were not just allies in this moment. They were family. Finally, with a sigh of relief, Lyra managed to stabilize Sarah. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, holding her friend's hand tightly. In that moment, Lyra knew that they had overcome a significant hurdle. The battle had tested their strength and unity, but they had proven that together they could face any challenge. As the dust settled and the last echoes of battle faded, Lyra felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. They had survived the fight, but the true test lay ahead. They needed to heal, rebuild, and strengthen the bonds that had been forged in the flames of conflict. Lyra glanced around at the medics, soldiers, and friends who had fought side by side. They had proven that fear could not tear them apart. They had learned that love, trust, and resilience were more powerful than any weapon. With a heart full of determination, Lyra knew that their journey was far from over. Together, they would continue to build a brighter future, one where the bonds of friendship and alliance would stand strong against the darkness that threatened their worlds. Healing the wounds. In the days following the fierce battle, the camp was filled with a somber yet hopeful atmosphere. The medics worked tirelessly to treat the wounded, and Lyra found herself at the forefront of the effort. Sarah was recovering, her strength slowly returning, and Lyra felt a sense of relief as she watched her friend regain her spirit. The triage tent buzzed with activity. Xyrethian and Terran medics worked side by side, their previous doubts and fears melting away in the face of adversity. Each life they saved seemed to strengthen the bond between the two groups, creating a sense of unity that Lyra had hoped for since the beginning. Lyra moved from patient to patient, her hand steady and her mind focused. She had witnessed the horrors of war, but she also felt the power of healing. Each person she treated was a reminder of why they fought together. As she bandaged wounds and checked vitals, she encouraged the soldiers, reminding them of their shared strength. One afternoon, Lyra noticed Roland helping a Xyrethian soldier who had sustained a severe injury. The soldier was frightened, but Roland's calm presence helped to ease his fears. Lyra admired how Roland had become a beacon of hope in their chaotic world. He understood that healing was not just about medicine. It was also about empathy. "Lyra," Roland called out, catching her attention. "Can you help me with this soldier? He's afraid and needs reassurance." Lyra rushed over, kneeling beside Roland and the soldier. "You're going to be okay," she said softly, looking into the soldier's eyes. "We are here for you, and we will take good care of you." The soldier nodded, though fear still lingered in his eyes. Lyra gently examined his wound, providing both physical care and emotional support. As she worked, she could feel the tension in the room begin to dissipate. "Thank you," the soldier murmured, his voice trembling. "I didn't think humans would care about us." Lyra smiled, warmth filling her heart. "We all share this fight. We're in this together." She could see the relief wash over the soldier's face, and it reinforced her belief in their alliance. As days turned into weeks, the camp became a sanctuary for healing. The soldiers shared stories, laughter, and camaraderie. They celebrated the lives they had saved and mourned those they had lost, standing united in their grief. One evening, after a long day of work, Lyra gathered with Roland, Sarah, and other medics around a small fire. The stars twinkled overhead, and the night air was filled with a sense of peace. They shared meals and talked about their cultures, forging connections that transcended their differences. "Tell us more about Earth," Roland said, leaning in with interest. "What is it like?" Lyra grinned, excited to share her world. "Earth is beautiful, filled with oceans, mountains, and forests. There are so many different cultures, languages, and traditions. We celebrate life in many ways, often through music and art." Sarah chimed in. "And food. There are endless varieties. Lyra, remember that spicy dish you made the other night? I loved it." Roland laughed, a deep, resonant sound. "I would like to try it. It sounds delicious." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest. They were building a new understanding, one that could change the course of their futures. She looked at Roland and Sarah, feeling grateful for the bonds they had forged amidst the chaos. As they shared stories and laughter, Lyra's heart swelled with hope. But she couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing on the horizon. Rumors of a new enemy had begun to spread throughout the camp, whispers of a force that threatened both Zorathians and Terrans alike. The next day, Lyra awoke to the sound of urgency. Soldiers rushed through the camp, their faces filled with alarm. She quickly got dressed and headed to the command center, her heart racing. "What's happening?" she asked, finding Roland and Sarah already there. "There's been a sighting of hostile ships approaching," Sarah replied, her brow furrowed with concern. "We need to prepare for an attack." Lyra's stomach dropped. "Do we know how many?" "Reports are still coming in," Roland said, his voice steady but tense. "We need to rally our forces and get ready to defend our camp." As they moved to organize the troops, Lyra felt a mix of fear and determination. She knew they had come too far to let this new threat tear them apart. They had fought side by side, and now they needed to stand together once again. The camp buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for battle. Lyra and Roland worked alongside each other, coordinating the medics and ensuring they were ready to treat any injuries that might arise. The sense of camaraderie was palpable, and Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Whatever happens, we face it together," Lyra said to Roland as they moved through the camp, checking on the medics. He nodded, determination etched on his face. "Together, we are strong. We will protect our people." As the sky darkened and the first enemy ships appeared on the horizon, Lyra took a deep breath. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she also felt the strength of her allies beside her. They were more than just soldiers. They were friends, united by a shared purpose. With a fierce resolve, Lyra stood alongside Roland and Sarah, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had proven their strength in healing, and now they would show their courage in battle. Together, they would fight for their lives and their futures, and together they would emerge victorious. The final stand. The atmosphere in the camp shifted as the enemy ships drew closer, their ominous shapes casting shadows over the bustling medics and soldiers. Lyra stood with Roland and Sarah, watching the darkening sky with a mix of fear and resolve. The sounds of preparation filled the air as soldiers gathered their weapons and strategized their defenses. Lyra's heart raced. She had never imagined she would find herself in such a situation, but the bonds she had formed with her comrades gave her strength. "We have to be ready for anything," she said, her voice firm. "We've trained for this moment, and we will not back down." Roland nodded, his jaw set. "We need to position the medics close to the front lines. If anyone gets injured, we'll need to act quickly." Sarah added, "And we need to keep communication open. If we can relay information about the enemy's movements, it will help us strategize better." As they moved to execute their plan, Lyra's mind was filled with thoughts of the lives they had saved together. They had fought side by side to heal wounds and provide care, and now they were ready to protect each other with everything they had. The camp quickly transformed into a fortress. Soldiers took their positions, weapons at the ready, while the medics set up trade stations. Lyra felt a sense of pride as she watched everyone come together, each person playing their part in the fight for their survival. Moments later, the first explosions rocked the ground. Lyra stumbled slightly but quickly regained her footing. "Stay focused," she shouted to the medics around her. "Keep your eyes on the wounded, and be ready to act." Roland and Sarah fought bravely alongside their comrades. The air was filled with the sounds of blaster fire and the cries of those injured in the fray. Lyra felt her heart racing as she moved through the chaos, doing her best to provide care for the wounded. "Over here," Roland called out, gesturing toward a soldier who had been struck by shrapnel. Lyra rushed over, her hands steady as she assessed the injuries. "Get me some bandages and antiseptic," she yelled. Her mind focused on the task at hand. She began to clean the wound, her hands working swiftly but carefully. As the battle raged on, Lyra and her team treated one patient after another. The enemy ships loomed overhead, raining down destruction, but their determination never wavered. Suddenly, Sarah stumbled back toward Lyra, her face pale. "Lyra, I can't find Roland. He was just here, and now he's missing." Panic surged through Lyra, but she forced herself to stay calm. "He's probably helping someone. Let's keep an eye out for him, but we can't leave this station. We have to stay here and help those who need us." Sarah nodded, but Lyra could see the worry etched on her face. They continued to work, but Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As the battle wore on, the cries of the wounded and the sounds of combat echoed around them. Lyra's focus remained on her patients, but her heart ached with concern for Roland. "Please be safe," she whispered under her breath, hoping he was all right. After what felt like hours, the tide of battle began to turn. The Terran and Zarethian forces pushed forward, fighting valiantly against the enemy. With each step they took, Lyra felt a flicker of hope growing in her heart. But then a loud explosion erupted nearby, sending a shockwave through the air. Lyra stumbled, falling to the ground. She quickly got back up, shaking off the disorientation, and looked around for Sarah and Roland. "Sarah," she shouted, panic rising in her chest. She spotted Sarah crouching beside a wounded soldier, tending to his injuries. But where was Roland? Just as she was about to call out again, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Lyra. Sarah. Over here." Lyra turned, her heart soaring, as she saw Roland waving from a distance. He was helping another soldier who had fallen. Relief washed over her as she rushed toward him, her worries fading for a moment. "Thank goodness you're okay," she exclaimed, her voice shaking with emotion. "I was so worried." Roland grinned, a determined look on his face. "We're not done yet. We need to keep pushing forward." Together, they made their way back to the front lines, where the fighting was intense. The Terran and Zarethian forces had gained ground, but the enemy was relentless. "Stay together," Lyra shouted as they fought their way through the chaos. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins as she dodged blaster fire and moved to help those in need. The battle raged on, but Lyra felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were fighting for each other, for their friends, and for a future that was worth saving. As they fought side by side, Lyra felt a bond forming, stronger than any she had ever known. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the last of the enemy ships fell from the sky. The Terran and Zarethian forces erupted into cheers, the sound echoing across the battlefield. They had won. But as Lyra looked around at the devastation, her heart ached for those they had lost. They had fought bravely, but the cost of victory had been high. Roland and Sarah joined her, their expressions a mix of relief and sorrow. "We did it," Roland said, his voice thick with emotion. "But at what cost?" Lyra nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "We have to honor those we lost and remember why we fought. Together, we can rebuild and make a better future." As the sun began to set on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the battlefield, Lyra felt a sense of hope rising within her. They had faced unimaginable challenges, but they had done so together. And together, they would heal the wounds of war and create a brighter tomorrow for all. In that moment, Lyra knew that the bonds they had formed would carry them forward into a new chapter filled with possibilities and hope. And as they stood united, they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, hand in hand.